and thank you for joining us for another episode of All Out Nevada, your go-to podcast for insightful glimpses into the Nevada judiciary. I'm your host, Seth Easley, representing Supreme Court of Nevada Administrative Office of the Courts. Today, we're tackling an important distinction that affects everyone involved in the legal system: legal information versus legal advice. As we dive into this important topic, it is my pleasure to welcome Emily Reed. Emily is the Assistant Court Administrator for the Second Judicial District Court, and she is here to share her knowledge on this topic. Thank you very much for joining me, Emily.
Thank you for having me, Seth. I'm excited to be here today.
As am I, and it's worth noting, today is the first time we've ever taken the podcast on the road. So thank you very much for arranging this conference room for us. And the Second Judicial District Courthouse is beautiful, and it's very nice to be here.
Well, thanks for coming. This is really, we're in the historic part of the courthouse, so it's really great to be able to film this podcast here and have you join us.
I agree. Now, as we dive into this topic, can you perhaps start by just giving us an overview of what the key differences are between legal information and legal advice?
So legal advice is something that can only be provided by an attorney. I think that a lot of times court employees work here for a long time and think, oh gosh, maybe I can give this information. But it is really limited to attorneys who are licensed in Nevada, who can practice law here. But how I always think of legal advice is applying the facts of the case to the law. And that's when it really flags for me. So some differences might be when you're giving legal advice, you're giving somebody a strategy. How can you win this case? Mm-hmm. Or where should you file that case?
So suggest a course of action, kind of.
Yes, absolutely. So suggesting telling them what they should do, trying to get them the best outcome so that they quote unquote win. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people would say that anytime you're in the legal system, you're not necessarily winning. It's really not that kind of a competition. But doing direct legal research for somebody, trying to resolve their specific problem, those things would be legal advice. Mm. Legal information is more general. So what is a motion? Different processes or procedures that are standard across every case type, that's information that you can give. Mm-hmm. You can also give information on different things like how you would do research. So if somebody were to come into the law library, we could teach them how to use the databases that we have. Mm-hmm. We just couldn't look up the specific cases that might address their situation. But we can absolutely teach them how to use the tools that we have. We can show them where they can get publicly available information. And really just, I think the other big thing is legal information can be given really by anybody.
Okay.
So you don't need to be a licensed attorney to provide that legal information. And legal information should be provided equally and fairly to everyone who comes down to the court.
Right. Okay. So it sounds kind of like, could almost be described as like the rules of the game, kind of like.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to put it. Okay. You can give them the rules of the game. You just can't
help them strategize.
Help them strategize.
To play that game.
Exactly.
Okay. So is that distinction often misunderstood by people who are accessing the court services?
Yes, very much so. And I think a big part of that is there are so many things available to us today at really our fingertips on our cell phones. Right. And there are so many places they can get to walk them through everything step by step. We don't really have that in the legal field.
Okay.
We have some like forms and packets and different resources, but we don't have that instantaneous gratification of here's how you win your case,
right?
Available to them. So they can get really upset when they come down if they don't understand exactly what we can provide.
Right. So people who access the court services often don't understand that distinction right away. So why is it so important that they do understand that distinction when they're interacting with court professionals?
So Seth, just to back up a little bit, It's not just members of the public that have a hard time understanding that distinction. Okay. Court staff has a hard time understanding that distinction, especially new court staff who come in and they want to provide people with every piece of knowledge and information that they have. So it can be really hard for court staff to find that line as well as the public. I think it's really important to understand that line because it can create public distrust of us if if they don't have a good understanding. It can also just escalate an interaction with a member of the public who thinks we're holding out on them or not giving them all the information they're entitled to, but we really just can't provide that extra information. And to be fair, they're usually coming to the court to deal with either something criminal, family, civil over $15,000, at least in our court. And so it can change the course of their life.
Right.
And they're stressed. They don't understand. They've never navigated through the court system a lot of times.
Right.
And so kind of having that roadmap for staff and for the public is really helpful. I actually, this might be jumping ahead on our next question, I think Nevada Supreme Court Rule 44 does a wonderful job of laying down what we can and can't do. And the really beautiful part about it is you can just print it out and you can give that to somebody.
Right.
And say, this is what the court can do. This is what the court can't do. And at least here in the Second Judicial, on our website, if you went to the Resource Center page, we have a list with sort of a thumbs up, thumbs down. This is what we can do for you, and this is what we can't do for you. And just having that available helps so much. There are so many times, the Nevada Supreme Court made it years ago.
Right.
It's how may I help you? Legal advice versus legal information. It was a training that was done, probably 15, 20 years ago. And it had a list of things we could do and things we couldn't do. And there were so many court staff when I first started who had it printed out and taped to their desk. And so when a member of the public would come in and ask them for something they couldn't do, they would be like, here you go. I can't do this. And it really gave them confidence. And it also, I think with the public, gave them that sort of reassurance that they weren't just not telling them,
right,
that this was something they weren't going to tell anybody. So it's really helpful.
That is helpful. So yeah, that is something the AOC is working on, new, updated, just more
modernized.
Yeah, modernized reference materials for public facing and for court staff reference. And we're working on different trial court visits and where we'll have these resources available if they decide they want to use them. But yeah, so that is making sure the public knows that they're not, well, first that the court staff knows the distinction, but also that the public knows they're not being held out on, like they are getting the same treatment. And it's to everyone's benefit that no one's being favored when being provided this assistance.
And we make sure staff knows if it's somebody from a law firm versus a self-represented litigant or somebody with a private attorney, they get the same information. So I've had a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but I've had a few support staff from law firms call before and, well, you just need to tell me this. Where does it say that in the law? And I always have to redirect them back down the hall to their attorney or whoever's in charge of their law firm. And they get so upset. I don't want to tell them I don't know this. Well, I still can't give you legal advice.
Right.
So you are going to have to go down there and tell them you don't know it, or you're going to have to find it.
Right.
But I can't do that directed legal research for you. And they have been some of, I think, the most frustrated.
Oh, yeah.
Because they expect that if they say, I'm with this law firm, I'm going to give them whatever they want. And it's equal information for everybody.
Okay. So could you perhaps now give us some examples of what might constitute legal information and legal advice in a typical court setting?
So I think one of the best examples that I have is court orders. So it would be legal advice for me to interpret a court order and say this order says you can do this or you can't do that. But it's not legal advice to read it out loud.
Okay. And
a lot of people get stuck on a word or a phrase early in the order. One particular example I had, it was an afternoon when we were closed to the public and I was in my office. So my old office where it was located, it was when we had the self-help center, and I could hear people in the lobby, even though I was in my office and we were closed. And this person is just having what I would call a panic attack. And she is in tears, and I go out there and I'm kind of like, okay, well, we're closed, but how, what's going on? How can I help you? And she had filed for an emergency temporary guardianship in a minor guardianship case, and her temporary guardianship had been denied, but it had been set for a hearing on the permanent guardianship. And she didn't understand that her whole petition hadn't been denied, just that only the temporary. She never got past that first denied.
I see.
To where she had a hearing, where she had all these steps that she was supposed to take before that hearing within certain timelines. And it was all really listed out for her. And so once I got her kind of calmed down, I just sat down and read her order out loud to her. And it was sort of a light bulb moment for her that, oh, there's more to this order.
Right.
That because her big thing was they don't care about us. We're, this terrible thing is going to happen if this child has to go home. And it was like, no, you didn't get this first part. Let's just keep reading. And I really want to take a minute to kind of highlight the literacy barrier that we have here in our community.
Okay.
Because I don't think that it is recognized by staff. A lot of people don't know how to read.
Okay. I wouldn't have necessarily known that either. And
according to the internet, which is not always right, but I'm gonna go with these stats anyways. It says 54% of Americans read at or below a 6th grade level, and 1 in 5 at or below a 3rd grade level. And so it is very real possibility that the person in front of you who's asking you to interpret their court order just simply can't read it.
Right.
And so you can read it out loud.
That's some good context. I, apart from being their literacy level, also just very emotionally charged. Like when you're really passionate about something, you see that first word denied, you're like, it's hard to keep reading, I guess.
Yes. And I always try and tell people, if I have somebody who's really emotionally charged, read it today. If you don't have an upcoming deadline, read it again tomorrow, read it again in a couple of days, and then see if you know your direction forward. Because sometimes when they first look at it, they don't actually absorb any of what's written. And a lot of times, especially I think in our family cases, there's very clear direction in those orders. And it's sort of step 1, step 2, and they just aren't absorbing that information.
Right. What are some common questions that court staff receive when people unintentionally ask for legal advice instead of legal information? And how should court staff navigate those situations? Sure.
Some common questions that I think we've gotten over the years is, who's the best divorce attorney? Can you recommend any attorney for me? Do I have a good case? Is this where I file this case? And that's a really tricky question because people move around so much more than I think they used to, even from state to state. And so we have a lot of people who come in with a child custody case and they have no idea where to file. We're really lucky because we have legal aid close by and we have a lawyer in the library program. And so we can redirect them out to that. Have I found the correct statute? Is this the correct form? So people really try and kind of drill down and get that information. But things like who's the best divorce attorney, we can really respond with, I can't tell you who to hire. The State Bar of Nevada does have a lawyer referral system. So we can push them out to that. Or, if you go to the law library, we have public access terminals. You can sit down and look up divorce attorneys in Nevada and different things like that. We do direct a lot of people to Lawyer in the Library because it's just such a phenomenal program. But it fills up. The signups are online now, Thursday mornings at 9. And I would say it fills up within the first 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. So do you want to just touch on what that is really fast?
Sure. So Lawyer in the Library hit our 25th year this year, which is just really wonderful to think about. But Lawyer in the Library is through the Washoe County Law Library, although there's different similar programs in Clark County through, I believe, Nevada Legal Services, possibly Northern Nevada Legal Aid. So there's a bunch of different Ask a Lawyers, those types of programs. So the one we have here at the Washoe County Law Library, they do signups Thursday mornings, and we have signups for family law, and then we have general law, and twice a month we have probate. And so people just sign up online. It's all on Zoom. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday evening from 5 to 7. And essentially, people who are able to sign up for the program log into the Zoom. They get the Zoom link like the day before, and they log into Zoom, and it's first come, first serve. And so we take them in the order that they log on, and they are dropped into the room with the attorney. They meet with the attorney for about 15 minutes, and then they're put back out with staff. And so a lot of times the attorney's like, you need this form. Okay. And so staff will help them pull that form off the internet or arrange for them to come in so they can help them get whatever resources that attorney had directed them to. But it's all online, which is so wonderful because it used to be a lottery system in person. And so now it's all remote. The attorneys don't have to leave their office.
It's
the members
accessible to the members of the public as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And the law library is open during the program. So if somebody didn't feel comfortable or confident on Zoom, they could come down, and we have Zoom rooms in the law library, and we can set them up, teach them how to use Zoom, and make sure they're comfortable so that they can then have access.
Okay. Yeah. What a great resource. That's amazing.
We always have a huge wait list. I think there were about 600 people on the wait list last year that we weren't able to get to. But the really nice part about having it online is if, for whatever reason, everybody doesn't show up who had spots, we start pulling people from the wait list and we start calling them. Hey, nice. Do you want to get into the program? And they do. And so that's really, I think, exciting too, because we fill every spot every week.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode of I'll Allow It Nevada. We're always striving to bring you valuable insights and education, not just for judicial officers, but for anyone interested in the Nevada judiciary. If you find our content helpful or intriguing, please share your experience with your friends, families, and colleagues. Your support helps us reach a broader audience and ensures that more people can benefit from our discussions. Thank you for listening and supporting I'll Allow It Nevada. Okay, so why is it important that court staff do not provide legal advice?
I think it's really important because they may not provide accurate legal advice to start with, right? Because they may not be attorneys and they may not be familiar with a practice area. So if you are at the front counter and you think, oh gosh, this is the logical next step for them, the law isn't always logical, and that might not be the right next step. And in giving them that information, that wrong advice could impact their life forever.
Right.
And so it's so important that we just really stick to that legal information. Also, we don't want to give legal advice to one side and then have the other side come down and not provide them with information. Being in the court is equal justice for all. And so it can't be, oh, that person came in and they were so nice, and so I told them what to do. And then the other party came in and they were mean and I didn't like them, so I told them nothing. That really just completely degrades the court system.
Right.
And so people need to be able to have trust and confidence in the court that they will be treated equally and fairly when they come in. And so it's just really important that court staff sticks with what they know. I would rather, even when it comes to legal information, if I have a new employee or somebody who's not sure, I would rather have them say, I don't know the answer, even if it squarely falls under legal information, simply because I don't want wrong information going out into the community. That could just really be detrimental to them.
That was something I remember distinctly from our conversations when you were helping us put together the Rule 44 training was no information is better than wrong information.
Yes, that cannot be restated enough, because at least if they have no information, they can go somewhere else and get the right information.
Right.
But trying to overcome wrong information is really difficult.
Right.
And court staff sees that all the time with litigants who are coming in and, oh, my friend got a divorce 2 years ago, and this is what they told me I needed to do. And we're sort of standing there like, that's not how you file something.
Right.
and trying to overcome that preconception or that wrong information is really difficult.
Right. Are there any kind of guidelines you have or that court staff can think about when they're faced with a question that may or may not be legal info or advice?
I think that if you answered with "I think," that could be heading down the path of legal advice, because if it's "How do I file a motion?" you don't need to think about that. You know how to file a motion. These are the steps you take. If it's a question, should I, would you, who would you hire? Those types of things, when they're sort of asking you personally, I think those are good red flags.
Like the woulds and shoulds. Yeah.
So those are nice. But I think over time you develop a comfort level with it, and really being confident in saying, no, I can't answer that, really goes a long way for court staff.
All right. So then what advice would you give to court staff or other professionals who are frequently approached with questions that may walk that line?
Stay patient.
Be patient.
Be patient, really. Be pleasant. And that sounds so weird, but I always try to kind of anchor myself with remembering how I felt in a situation outside of the court system where I didn't know the rules of the game.
Right.
Where I was hurt and trying to navigate my way through, in my case, the medical system, and how overwhelmed and stressed and upset I was. And that's how they're feeling. They've maybe never been to court before. They may not have any attorneys in their family. I think a lot of times people get connected to the court and start working at the court because they know somebody in the legal field. So they've already had exposure to different legal things that happen, and they're not as intimidated. But remember, that person standing on the other side of the window is scared. They're trying to figure out the best route forward for them and their family. And so just remaining patient, redirecting them, and providing them with all of the information that you can provide, regardless of if they're mean or nice or well-dressed or not well-dressed. It's really just about finding the words that are authentic to you, really keeping kind of that calm no matter what in the face of whatever emotions are coming off of this person, and not adopting those emotions as they're sort of being directed at you. And then always remember, you can refer them to other places. And I think that kind of goes into your next question, Seth.
Yeah. Are there resources or tools available to people who need legal advice but may not be able to afford an attorney?
There are a lot of legal resources out there. There are, of course, never enough for the volume of people that we have in our community who need their help. But we have Lawyer in the Library, which we talked about earlier. There is legal aid here in the state of Nevada. So here in Washoe County, we have Northern Nevada Legal Aid, and they actually opened a self-help center on the first floor in the Reno Justice Court. So they're down there, and we can direct people with questions down there. They can assist, especially with justice court matters here in Washoe County. So they're right there. And Nevada Legal Services also operates out of that space on different programs. So they're right here in our courthouse. Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada is down south in Clark County's courthouse. In both of them, they have self-help centers, as well as they have their own offices that do other different programs. I think the law school, so Boyd down in Las Vegas, also has different programs for people who need help. The Administrative Office of the Courts has created a State of Nevada self-help website, which has a lot of great information and resources on it. There are guided interviews for different family court forms or protection orders that are available here in Nevada. There are sort of the Ask a Lawyer programs and different things like that. Plus, we have some amazing law libraries here where you can do your own research. But there's a lot of information out there. I think it's just kind of weeding through and getting connected to services. But so many places have services that you wouldn't even think about. Our senior center has legal aid there, and they're available to assist seniors. They do different wills clinics for veterans. So there's just a lot out there if you call and ask. A lot of times these different agencies can help redirect you and get you to the right place.
Okay, so people need to know to ask. People need to know that they're out there. Maybe not enough for the demand, but services are available?
Services are available, and they're in unusual places too. So for Washoe County employees, we have, there is an employee assistance program, and the Second Judicial District Court also has a employee assistance program, and that program actually provides some free legal advice. Oh. And so there's places that you wouldn't think to look that are available to different people based on their jobs. Mm-hmm. And so really trying to get people to flesh out some of those resources is something the law library can kind of help steer people towards and say, hey, did you check this? Or did you think about this?
Okay.
For resources. But there are a lot of resources out there.
Excellent. So before I wrap up the discussion, I was curious, do you have any strategies or phrases that you might think of when redirecting someone who is asking for legal advice? This is kind of going back to what we were speaking earlier, but.
I think it's kind of looking at that confidence in how you answer. Mm-hmm. Because the more confident you are in saying, yes, I can provide you with this information, or no, I can't provide you with that legal advice, the more receptive the person on the other end receiving it is going to be.
Okay.
If you look uncomfortable, you look unsure, your voice is wavering, they
might press the issue a bit more.
A lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more. And, and I kind of will just laugh about it a little bit with them. It's still the same question. I still can't answer that. I appreciate, that you're trying to do everything you can to advocate for yourself, but I still can't give you that information. You have to be authentic to yourself. You have to find your own words. And some of that just comes with experience and time, but trying to copy somebody else's way of saying something isn't necessarily going to put you in a good place with the public. So something that you have confidence in, whether it's showing them Rule 44 and saying, I can't do this, or just telling them verbally, maybe in a difficult situation, it's getting a supervisor. I would just tell any court staff who's struggling with a particular person and they continue to have maybe more than one bad interaction, it may just be that they need to communicate with somebody else. Right. Somebody else may say it differently. We've had experiences with people who come in, I think especially with the law library, and you would say something to them and they just would not understand. And you would try to say it a different way and they still wouldn't understand. But you went and got a coworker who came out and was a fresh person with a fresh perspective and said the same thing you've already said twice, but in their own way. And the person's like, oh, okay, you can't do that. And so sometimes it's, you just can't bridge that gap with somebody. And knowing, okay, I escalate this person every single time they're here. I am not the right person to help them.
Right.
Let me get a teammate. And I think that's okay. And I always tell my new hires, like, if you don't think you're getting anywhere with someone and you have a teammate available, sort of bring that teammate in to help you, because they may be able to say it in a way that person understands.
Right. So that's good to know. Yeah, it's okay to recognize that when you need to pull in someone else. All right. So I guess I just have one last question for you. So we kind of touched on this a little bit. It has a bit to do with the equitable delivery of justice. So what level of discretion do court staff have when determining what, if any, legal information to provide to a party or someone who is seeking to file?
I think some of this is really based on your court. So for my teams, they do need to give information on a lot of different topics. So how do I get a copy of the court record? You absolutely need to provide that information here at our court. I can't imagine that it wouldn't be the same at every court here in Nevada. I'd be very surprised on how do I get a certified copy of a document from the court record that's public. So there is a base level of information that we need to provide, like how do I access the court? How do I file? Some of these really basic things. But it's going to depend on your specific court, how much information they want you to provide. And then the really important thing is to just make sure that you're providing that same level of information across the board.
Right.
So if there is, a policy in place where you always answer this question, but you don't answer this question. Just apply it to everyone. And, for our court, really, it's not so much on the legal information side, but we consider it legal advice to count the number of days somebody has to respond or to file something, right? Like, have I exceeded my deadline or something like that? So we won't help people with that. Like, if they come in and they're asking us questions on it, we'll just keep redirecting them that's legal advice, that's legal advice. But at the same time, we would show somebody the motion practice and stuff like that and give them sort of the tools to count their own days if that was something they needed.
Okay.
I don't know that was that helpful. But
I think it was.
But yeah, I mean, I think they only have the level of discretion that their judicial officers and court administration are really giving them.
I see.
And those guidelines. But we do want to give them as much legal information as we can, because it doesn't just help them, it also helps us. If somebody knows how to file something, especially with electronic filing, I want them to file it one time and I want to accept it. And we have certain things that we can't accept. So it has to have an affirmation. It has to have a case number. It has to have a signature for us to accept it. And I don't want someone's filing to get rejected 10 times because they can't figure it out.
Right.
And so that's the kind of information it's essential for court staff to provide so that people have access to the court and can get their matter before a judicial officer.
Right. All right. So I guess last but certainly not least, is there anything else that you would like to share, be it court staff, members of the public, anything else you would like to add on this subject before we close it out?
I just want to remind everyone again of Nevada Supreme Court Rule 44, because that really answers a lot of these questions and gives you a solid foundation for what you can do. So read it often. Don't hesitate to go back to it or to provide it to members of the public who need it.
Amazing. Perfect. Excellent advice.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you so much for joining me, Emily. I very much enjoyed our discussion, and I very much enjoyed collaborating with you on these projects. So thanks again for hosting me and taking the time to speak with me.
Thanks for coming, Seth.
Thank you. A heartfelt appreciation to our guest and to everyone who has tuned in to this episode. Before we wrap up, here are a couple of quick, important reminders. For continuing legal education credit, be sure to complete a certificate of attendance and email it to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or comments, we welcome your input. Please email them to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. Also, we now have a topic suggestion form available in the description. Please take a moment to fill it out if you would like your voice heard. We value and look forward to hearing from our listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes of I'll Allow It Nevada. This is Seth Easley signing off. Take care, Nevada.